Welcome to our tutorial about the frequency spectrum. We're going to learn how music fits into the frequency spectrum so you can best prepare to record and mix it. A fully functional human ear can hear frequencies between 20 Hz and 20,000 Hz. Anything below 20 Hz is called infrasound, or too low for humans to hear. Any frequencies above 20,000 Hz are called ultrasound, too high for us to hear. All those vibrations in between make up the spectrum of audio frequencies that are audible to humans. The sensations of these frequencies are commonly referred to as pitch. A high pitch is a high frequency and a low pitch is a lower frequency. Many musically trained people can detect as small a difference as 2 Hz between sounds. 20 Hz would be about an octave below the last note on your piano, and 20,000 Hz would be about 2 octaves above the highest C on a piano. When you double the frequency, you raise the pitch 1 octave. Middle C resonates at about 260 Hz. The C above it resonates at about 520 Hz, that's 520 cycles per second. Your music will contain elements from the full spectrum, and one of the most important things for you to know is where and how the different sounds in your music fit into this spectrum and what the combined impact of your instrument choices is. Generally, in music engineering, we consider frequency in terms of bands. You'll be familiar with some frequency bands like bass and treble controls on your stereo. When you raise the bass knob, you boost the volume of the lower frequencies in the music. When you raise the treble knob, you boost the volume of the higher frequencies. For a music engineer, you'll need more than these 2 frequency bands. You'll need to think of your music in at least 5 frequency bands: lows, low mids, mids, upper mids, and highs. The lows are found between about 20 Hz to 150 Hz. This is where you find the beefy part of the kick drum, as well as the fundamental frequency of the bass guitar. Lows give your work power, but because they carry the most energy of all the bands, because the waves are the longest, they need to be managed well, or it'll cover up the other bands. The low mids are found between 150 Hz up to 600 Hz. This is where you'll find the frequencies that give the bass guitar its definition, and the body of an organ or acoustic guitar, as well as the oomph of a snare. Low mids give your work fullness, like the rice in your rice and vegetables dinner. If the low mids aren't managed properly, your mix is going to sound muddy. The lows and the low mids can be tricky to integrate well. Too much energy down in these bands will definitely weigh your work down. It'll sound muddy and low. The mids are found between about 600 Hz to 1.5 kHz, that's 1,500 Hz. Our ears are most sensitive to these frequencies. When you hear telephone hold music, you're hearing mostly mids. If you hold a paper towel tube up to your ear, you'll hear what it sounds like when mids are emphasized. It's not surprising that since the mids tend to catch our ears, the fundamental frequencies of many melodic instruments, including the human voice, tend to be found here. If there's too much emphasis on the mids in your work, it's going to honk instead of sounding smooth. The upper mids are located roughly between 1.5 kHz and 6 kHz, are obviously very high frequencies. Most instruments don't have their fundamentals in this range, but a lot of harmonics are found here. So this band will give your work presence. If the upper mids are too low, a part's going to sound distant or thin. Too high and the music is annoying or fatiguing to listen to, like a harsh synthesized brass sound. The highs are found between 6 kHz and 20 kHz. These give your work brightness. If you don't capture the highs in recording, it's generally more difficult to compensate for them later on. Too many highs and your work will be brittle and hissing. Not enough highs, and the song might seem unclear, lifeless. The lower part of this range is where a cymbal crash lies. The middle part of this range is responsible for the crispness in the sound. The upper part brings additional lightness and clarity. Music engineers use a tech called equalization to adjust these frequency bands in your music. We'll be learning more about equalization, or EQ, later in this course. This concludes our tutorial about the frequency spectrum.